going on, everybody? Hope that you're doing well. Jay Cameron here, and glad to be able to talk to you, coming to you live from Accra, Ghana. Yeah, it's been a minute since we've been live. I just did a live not too long ago, but glad to be able to talk to you here. And we're going to dive into this. This is going to be a topic. I have so many things. That's like I haven't done a live in a while. So because of that, there are going to be a whole flurry of lives. I may be going live a couple times a day because the information download and upload has been so intense over the past several months that I want to make sure that I drop this information out here. So what I want you to do, though, make sure you hit that subscribe button, make sure you hit the notification bell, and make sure that you share Maximum Impact with Jay Cameron as we're bridging the gap between Africa and the African diaspora. Yes, we do travel tours, but we also have conversations, critical thought conversations that allow us to expand some of our contextual understandings in a way that gives us the ability to, stand up in the face of some of this nonsense. And so tonight, I'm going to talk, well, it's nighttime here. I'm going to talk about some of this nonsense. And my delivery is not always the most gentle or politically correct. It is what it is. It is what it is. And I'm going to talk about this Pope. And I'll be the first one to tell you that I have no respect for systems of terrorism. And as you begin to understand the history of many of the institutions that have raised us, that have indoctrinated us, that have educated us, those systems were put in place by design in order to exploit our lack of knowledge or our lack of information for their benefit. And so that is the case. That is no different when it comes to the Catholic Church and the human terrorism that it has levied upon countless indigenous peoples across the world. And so we're going to talk about what happened with the indigenous people in Canada, but this is what they did down in Africa. This is why I cannot understand how in the world the Catholic Church is allowed to build a cathedral in the heart of Accra, Ghana, with all of the terrorism that it has put on West Africa. And so, but that's part of the system. I mean, I can't understand how the Mormons are setting up shop in a place where they feel that the people are cursed and less than, but that's a whole different topic. But for those who are getting a little nervous and for those who don't quite understand where this might be going, let me play a clip for you so you can see what this so-called Feeble Pope did this week, and then I'll help you, and you feel free to comment, and we can get into some of the understanding a little bit more. But this is what just happened this week.
Pope Francis today issued a long-awaited apology to Canada's Indigenous people for decades of cultural genocide. The Pope called the abuse Indigenous children suffered at schools run by Catholic missionaries, quote, catastrophic. More on this from CBS's Chris Livesay.
A dark chapter and a feeble pope trying to turn a new page, honoring generations of Indigenous Canadians, past and present, amid the sacred native rituals the church once sought to erase. I've come to your native lands to tell you in person that I am pained and to beg God for forgiveness, the Pope says. From the late 1800s to 1997, more than 150,000 Indigenous children were taken from their families to attend residential boarding schools. The goal? To forcibly assimilate them and make them Christian, often violently punishing them for speaking their native language, even cutting their long hair. It was a common saying at the time, kill the Indian, save the man. Richard Green spent 9 years at a residential school.
It was horrid. It was horrid. Yeah, that's to say the least.
I'm here to remember the past and to cry with you, Francis said, before receiving a high honor, usually reserved only for chiefs. A church that once sought to suppress a culture, now humbled by it instead. Now, the grim legacy of these boarding schools is not unique to Canada. There were once more than 400 of them in the United States as well. Earlier this year, the Interior Department issued a report citing withholding of food, solitary confinement, and beating of Native American children there. Major?
Chris Livesay.
Well, That should be of no surprise to anyone, because when I say this, I mean for some people it is a surprise, but for those who understand the history of the Catholic Church and what it has done over hundreds of years and probably thousands of years since its inception, however long it's been around, it has done these things notoriously. It did it with the Dums Diversus, Pope Nicholas V and King Alfonso V. Were able to come together, and that's what started the European transatlantic slave trade. And so the same tactics to erase the indigenous culture and replace it with this pseudo-Christian whatever foolishness that they peddle, and impose it upon the people. And then the saddest part is when the people embrace it and impose it upon themselves, and that's part of the strategy. Basically what they did from the late 1800s up until 1997, according to this report, was took these children and put them in these schools and tried to demonize their indigenous culture, and then say that this Catholic religion was superior and the correct way to do it. So let's cut your hair, let's change your language, let's do all these different things. And so now at this point, this is what's going to make you holy, righteous, saved, or whatever it is. And again, this is not what just happened with these people. This is what's happened throughout the world at the hands of the Catholic Church. They even did it to their own up in Ireland, and the stuff that was going on with the nuns and the babies and all this other kind of stuff. And this is why, for me, I don't understand how anybody can sit up and go to mass or anything, to sit up there and just be like, what? I for the life of me. But the only way that I can deduct it is if somebody just does not know. Now, the other part of it is these apologies that come in, and the Pope is sorry, and with the church, well, there's another clip I'm going to show you in a second. The Pope is sorry, and so now the people are, okay, we're glad to hear an apology, but the Catholic Church has made all this money off of the blood of these people, and so they're not cutting these checks that are commensurate with what they have stolen. And so these weak apologies that keep coming across and people keep accepting them as okay. It's like, okay, I can forgive you, but still cut that check. Still there needs to be some sort of damages that are paid as a result of what was stolen. That's why we have courts of law. That's why the same system that's been put in place, if we try to do that, the everyday person tries to do that, well, we're going to court, risk jail time and everything else. But you have these institutions and these systems in place. They do whatever they want to do. All they do is issue an apology, issue a small check that's not quite lining up with the value of what was stolen or destroyed, and then everybody's supposed to say that's how we move forward. And in reality, people are not moving forward. They're just learning how to cope because they really don't know what else to do. So they tell themselves, I'm moving forward because I'm just choosing not to, I can't change it, I can't do anything about it, so I'm just going to block it out. But that trauma that occurred, if not properly dealt with, does not go anywhere, and it will manifest. Oftentimes it manifests in self-destructive behaviors, or it manifests in behaviors of destroying someone else or taking it out on someone else who's innocent, while the perpetrator continues to go on and continue to do all the different things that's happened over decades and still continue to raise money, and people still continue to send their children to these schools and saying that their schools are of higher value and higher education and all of these other kind of things that come along with this branding campaign that happened over the years. It's for me, and I say this for someone who spent many years in religious settings, it's disgusting. It's disgusting. And I think what's more disgusting is when you hear people who have been abused by it and who are being abused by it either deny the abuse or excuse the abuse. And that's the part that's it's really sad. Now, I'm going to show this next clip, and then I'm going to tie this into, because some people say, well, I'm not Catholic, I'm Protestant. Well, the Anglican Church was doing the same type of stuff, different ways, but the Anglicans, the Protestants, all of them were doing the same type of stuff. And so let me show you this clip, because I do like something that this lady said is really key, and we'll talk about it. Let's take a look at it.
Indigenous community. Well, Assembly of First Nations National Chief RoseAnne Archibald is in Edmonton, and she joins me now. National Chief, thank you for joining me.
Hi, David.
I'd like to start, if I could, with your assessment of the Pope's apology. What were your thoughts as he spoke?
Well, I was very hopeful. And I do want to say that he has met the TRC call to action number 58, where he came to Turtle Island, also known as Canada, to offer that apology on in one of our territories. And today was significant because it was at the site of one of the former institutions of assimilation and genocide. And so it did fall short, as you said. It was not on behalf of the Catholic Church, which is what we were all hoping for. And he also didn't address a couple of key issues, one of them being the doctrine of discovery, which we have been asking for generations now. I'm not the first national chief to ask for the doctrine of discovery to be rescinded, and I certainly won't be the last. And that didn't make it into his speech at all. And he also didn't address genocide. You know, thousands and thousands of our children died in these institutions. And I'm not sure why you can't address that. I mean, to me, that is genocide when thousands of children die. And so, you know, it fell short. At the same time, you know, I woke up this morning thinking about my mom, who went to St. Anne's, as well as three of my siblings. My older sister died there. And so there's a lot of trauma, and I'm an intergenerational trauma survivor as well. And, you know, I thought about her and how she would feel about being able to see the Pope issue this apology. And what I appreciated about what he said is he said, "I am very sorry." And he said it a couple of times. And I think that to me is a step forward, but those are just words, right? We need action beyond that. And he also alluded to that as well. He talked a little bit about, you know, this is just the first step. He talked about an investigation. So what does that mean? Is that like an investigation with the church? We have been calling for an international independent investigation into this situation. So is he supporting that? He kind of raised more questions
Right.
In some parts of his speech.
I just want to jump in if I can, because obviously, you know, your answer, this is a complicated day, right? In that an apology can satisfy the demands of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, but still fall short in some ways, be deficient in some ways. And just for people who don't know, the doctrine of discovery, and forgive me if I oversimplify this, these are essentially papal edicts from centuries ago that gave the right to colonize and convert to the Christian nations who set out to find the New World, as they called it at the time. And that's not there, right? That's not part of this. And the lack of an apology for the role of the church itself, does that, I know you say it meets the requirement, but does that undermine this in any way? I mean, or is this good enough, the best you could expect, I wonder?
Well, he has a few more days in Canada. So I'm hoping that, you know, my call and other leaders' calls for the revoking the doctrine of discovery is actually met before he leaves, and that he really contemplates our request for the role of the Catholic Church in the destruction of our families, in the destruction of our culture and languages, and in the death of our children. These are important concepts and things that he must begin to integrate into his apology. And so, you know, we won't know until he leaves Canada whether he actually meets any of those criteria for a proper apology, but we're hopeful, always hopeful. And, you know, to get back to my mom, she was Catholic, and, you know, I know she was a very forgiving and loving person. And I know there are Catholic people out there, survivors, who will embrace this, who are willing to forgive, who are willing to move forward. And there are also people who just will not, and it's not good enough. And I'm one of those people. You know, I'm my mother's daughter. At the same time, I think there could have been more, and we deserve more, for sure.
Well, what you have needed to see on a personal level so you could move forward and accept?
Well, the doctrine of discovery is really important because it's not just a document, it's a structure. It encases us as Indigenous people. It still exists. So the idea that terra nullius, which means that the land is empty, that has to be revoked because the land was not empty. We were placed here by the Creator. We have inherent rights. We have God-given rights. We have Creator-given rights with respect to the lands and resources and waters of this country, of Turtle Island. And I think that that's really important to note, that it's not just a document to be sort of torn up and thrown away. It's a construct that needs to be dismantled, because what we're really talking about is colonialism. We're talking about the colonization of this country and how that has been destructive to Indigenous people in Canada, in places like Australia, in the US, and in places around the world. It's a larger issue, and so it really must be revoked. It's a very important part of the healing path forward.
I want to ask you one more question before we say goodbye. And forgive me if this sounds like I'm oversimplifying it, because I know reconciliation is an ongoing and permanent, never-ending process. But where does this fit into that path forward that you're talking about, on that path toward reconciliation? I know you struggle with this, and it's not enough for you. But how do you think this fits into that larger process that we're going through in Canada?
Well, there's a saying that the best apology is changed behavior. And I alluded to this on day one when I got to Edmonton, that there are no roles for women in leadership within the church. I mean, this is a very archaic institute. It's a very archaic religion, and it has to be modernized. And so I think ultimately all of these concepts are very much tied together, and we have to move beyond words. We have to see that action. We need to see the records from the Vatican. We need to see them fulfill what they were supposed to fulfill under the TRC, which is to contribute to healing for First Nations. They were let out of that deal, as you know. So we have to talk about that. We have to talk about the doctrine of discovery. There are many action pieces that have to be put forward and walked forward together. And we also have to talk about the truth. The truth is that Canada is not what people think it is. There's a myth about Canada, but the truth is thousands and thousands of our little ones died in these institutions of assimilation and genocide. And we have to talk about the truth before we can get to reconciliation.
In one last question, I know I said the last, so I'm going to sneak one more in. In terms of the particular relationship with the Catholic Church, you know, the Pope has talked about an investigation, even though there was a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, but there is this ongoing call for transparency and disclosure from the Vatican and churches at local levels. He's going to leave at the end of this week, the Pope is. What's the one thing you want to see come next after this visit that could really help towards this the healing part of the process?
There are key actions that have to happen. We need to see those records. We still can't identify some of these little ones that went missing or that died there. That's a really key part of it, is we need to know the truth of the numbers of children that died, who they are, who their families are. That's a really important part of healing. And we need the Catholic Church itself to acknowledge that it has had a role in the destruction of cultures and languages and the deaths of our children. We need that acknowledgement by the church as an institution. So as we move forward, if we can start to walk that healing path forward, it has to be based on truth, telling the truth and acknowledging the truth in this whole scenario that we find ourselves in today, which is we're trying to heal from so much trauma, generations of trauma. And, you know, the Catholic Church itself has to do more than just offer words.
National Chief, thank you for sharing your words with us tonight. We appreciate your time.
Thank you. Take care.
She said a whole lot right there, because, you know, when you begin to think about what this doctrine of discovery, they had different doctrines of discovery, if you will, all throughout the world, and again, coming to say I'm sorry and not offering the proper damages for it. That's the history of the world. People destroy it. I'm sorry, and then everybody else, okay, you know, kind of like children, you know. They hit you, okay, and now obviously when children, the damages aren't severe, but that's kind of like the way people have been conditioned. And then this whole thing of trying to be accepted into this institution, the best way to deal with things like this is to remove yourself from the institution. Don't give them your money, walk away from it. Instead of trying to be included into it, say, you know what, fine, I'm going a different direction, and I recognize the core of it, and especially when it's hard for institutions to come clean, when they basically have to have their arm twisted off before they'll say, you know what, we were wrong and we need to do this and we need to make it right. But making it right with an apology is just is weak. And then again, I say this because as I travel throughout Africa, I see the hand of the Catholic Church everywhere. I see the hand of the Anglicans everywhere. Especially when you start seeing the European side, you go on the Arab side and you begin to see the Islamic influence that the Arabs had and how they would use that on the people. But then you come around on the west coast down through the south and then up through the east as well, you see a lot of the Portuguese influence. And all of these dungeons I go to and all these different places, you see a church or some sort of religious institution at the center of it, at the core. And so now when you begin to go back that far and you see these people, the Catholic Church is finally starting to admit certain things, for someone who has been raised under these particular systems, like myself, I had to start asking questions, and I had to start saying, look, it's been polluted. You get to the core. You say the core of it has been polluted because the influence of this has been so powerful. So even when people say, well, I'm Protestant, I'm not Catholic, what most people don't realize is that the Protestant side that they're claiming is still influenced by the Catholic side. When you look at the structure and you see all of this happening, you begin to realize where the origins of the structure come from. It points right back to Catholicism. And that is for anyone who's really going through self-discovery or discovery or whatever it is that they're going through or looking for. If you omit that from your process, then the process becomes disingenuous, because now it's like, well, wait a minute, especially for people who've been in these various systems for their entire life, and they ignore the origins of what the systems come from, or they don't even seek out what the origins are, then they're always going to be on a search for certain things. Because like for example, I went to Louisiana at the Whitney Plantation, and that's when I discovered the role of Pope Nicholas V and King Alfonso V, and how all of that tied into the terrorism that particular institution, the Catholic Church, placed upon my ancestors in Africa. And so that was real, and they tell you. See, the interesting thing is they don't try to hide it from you. They tell you, look, that's what we did. We're sorry. Let's move on. It's like, yeah, but y'all still collecting all the money off of all of that stuff that you did. You're still, the investments that you made are investments that you stole from these people, and you're still doing this, and it's still happening, and you're coming with a smooth tongue saying I'm sorry, and you've indoctrinated the people to the point where they won't even hold you accountable. You can look at some of these priests that are out here messing with these boys and these girls and the nuns and each other and everything else. And so you see how all of this stuff is happening, and people just kind of say, oh, well, you got black folks lusting to send their children to Catholic school. Lusting, crying, and screaming and hollering if the children can't get up in Saint whatever Catholic school without even understanding the history of what that institution is doing and the doctrines and all of this different stuff that they're putting, into the minds of the children. Now, some people say, well, I'm doing it from a strategic standpoint, and we're just trying to position our child better. That may be 1 or 2, 3, 4 people, but if it's 500 people, but rest assured, 90% of them are like following this notion that Catholic school is better, and that's just how they position themselves. That's how they do it, and it's really unfortunate to see. But there are just a couple points that I looked at when the other thing, when on the first clip they put the feathers on top of the Pope's head. I'm saying, why do we honor those systems that have done so much damage? Why do we now say, okay, you came and apologize, now we want to go? Is that the peace pipe? I don't know what it is. Is that what that symbolizes? But I've seen it happen in many cultures, not just in that particular case. I've seen it happen where I think I saw some some African tribe was giving somebody some gold or something, the queen some gold or whatever. And I'm like, why, Queen of England, I should say, just to preface it, the Queen of England, Elizabeth. Why are, what is that? Why? Well, we want to show that we are peaceful and we're trying to move forward. Okay, I mean, that could be done without putting, giving an honor to someone that was given that's supposed to be given to a chief. Is that backdoor white supremacy? Is that backdoor imperialism? I don't know. When I see those types of things, the eyebrow goes up. Okay, cool. You want to come apologize? All right. Well, so now we need to sit down and negotiate. Those were thousands, tens of thousands of children. I think they said like 150,000 children that dealt with this stuff. And in cultural assimilation, what is the long-term residual effect of that? How effective has it is? Is it now been ingrained into the people to the point where now they are, okay, cool, it happened, so, but we still Catholic now. We still Catholic without even, put an F in there, Catholic, without even asking the question of like, is what I'm reading, is what you're teaching me even legitimate? It's what you're teaching me and your interpretations of it and how you're teaching it to me and the way that you want me to understand it. Is that the ultimate goal here, that you, even with all of that, you've taught me in such a way that I've become docile and passive. I don't question you. I don't challenge you. You basically castrated my aggression because you use your particular religion to push this down on me. So now I don't question certain things. Now that makes me docile and you can kind of run over me. These are just questions that I think about. What else? It's still a mindset that many people still get duped into. This conversion process. We're going to demonize who you are, and we're going to elevate ourselves above you. You have people walking around doing this, not just Catholics, but you have Protestant Christians walking around doing it. I'm telling you, I spent 25 years in that world, and that's basically how we were indoctrinated, to look at everybody else like they were the problem. Y'all the problem. Y'all gonna bust hell wide open but we are the saints, and we are the ones, we are the chosen ones, and we are the ones. And so all of this stuff it starts to filter down, and on many levels, it's just reconstituted either white supremacy or Arab supremacy. However, the culture has been, whoever dominates the culture comes in with whatever their belief system is and imposes that upon the larger population, those who are not strong enough to stand up and say, hey, listen, I got some questions about what you're telling me. Who's interpreting this? Why should I trust that interpretation over this interpretation? A lot of people just won't question it, and they just go with the flow, and it becomes like this groundswell of peer pressure. Because if you start asking too many questions or you start challenging too many systems, now folks getting a little nervous and all these different things, or they want to ostracize you, or they want to back away from you. They don't want to be near you. They don't want to they just want to avoid you when you start asking questions. But they feel something on the inside. They're suffering on the inside, but they don't have the courage to be able to stand up and ask questions. Or if somebody does ask questions, then they get punished for it. They get whipped for it. Now, these days, you go into what they call it, Facebook jail or whatever, if you start asking too many questions, or they start wanting to delete your channels. All types of things start happening when you start asking too many questions. And so that causes people to become fearful. Let's see, what else? All right, so this challenge is dedicated primarily to the African diaspora and connecting the African diaspora to Africa. Well, how does all of this tie in? How does what happened with the Catholic Church and the indigenous people in Canada, how's that even relevant to what's going on the continent of Africa as well as in America? The reason why it's relevant is because the Catholic Church has had that same power on both places, whether it's on the continent of Africa or whether in the country of America, obviously South America, Canada, obviously Mexico, the Caribbean. So you begin to see all of these images, these images of Catholicism all over the place. And so when you demonize, or when you cause people to demonize themselves, and they see their own, and now don't get me wrong, I've seen some things that make it just your eyebrow go up. Even in some indigenous places, like I don't know if I'm trying to do that either. But it's like when that begins to happen, you wonder. I was just yesterday. I was at the mall here in Ghana, and I saw the little Mormons walking around, and they stand there. They got this little arrogant look at them. I grit on them. They from DC, y'all know what you grit on somebody. We going back in the '80s and '90s. I grit on them jokers because they standing there like, and I'm looking at them like, whatever. Because it's standing there, it's got this attitude like they have the answer, and they, have this connection to God, and we're here to save these poor peasants of Africans, and they don't know the Lord, and they need us to come here and evangelize and proselytize and convert them, and so this is what we need to do to them, and so that's why we're here, and we're still going to extract the resources and build our temples and go into their villages, and this is what we're going to do. And in my experience, now, obviously, let me not blanket all Mormons to be the same, because some, I'm sure, are very kind and nice and loving and all of those things. But the ones I encounter are some nasty, arrogant, whats. And I'm like, hey, and I'm just waiting for, somebody to pop off the wrong way. I'm just waiting for it. But they keep quiet. They know how to, because, they're working in their little stealth stuff. That's how they do it. So, but when it comes to, and this is what I try to tell Black Americans, especially when it comes to like the Black church. The Black church is just really an offshoot of several institutions, okay? And this is the part where people they get upset because they don't want to hear this, but if you are somebody who wants the truth, then you can handle this. An offshoot of Catholicism, an offshoot of Protestantism, and then an offshoot of indigenous West African spirituality, whichever part of it came from. And normally it's a morph of that. That's where you get the shout, dance, and all of that, because you don't see a lot of this stuff. You don't see it in the Catholic Church, first of all. You don't see it in the Protestant Church. So where does all of this stuff come from? Now, some people will say the Holy Spirit did that, and all of this, that, and the other. But when you begin to understand the influence of culture on religion, and then how it becomes reciprocated. Now you have religion, and the way that religion ties into the culture. It's like it's a cycle. It's just like it just kind of goes like this. So most people don't know why they're doing what they're doing, and for many of us, especially when it comes to the Black church, and the Black church is in America is just as influential as Black musicians, entertainers, and artists on the world, because they have the platforms, they have the money, they have the ability to go get on the satellite dishes and get pumped into people's minds all over the world. So oftentimes people don't question what they're seeing. They believe since they're on TV, they have a large audience, they must be credible, without understanding marketing, without understanding business, without understanding that oftentimes there are atheists who fund many of these religious institutions. They're looking at it. Somebody needs some seed money to get a church started. Somebody needs something to get going. Okay, well, where do we get our seed money from? Well, let me go to the atheists, because we don't have the money. So we're going to go to the atheists to see if we can get a loan, or maybe we can get a seed money or whatever. We can invest in this particular religious institution. That money comes back in, and that's how it works. Most people aren't thinking like that. Most people are thinking, okay, this is a good spiritual situation, and this is how this thing is going to flow. And hey, I just have to believe, because when I was down and out, and they came and brought me some food, they gave me a turkey at Thanksgiving, they gave me a coat, they did this, they did that. So I'm not going to question the motives, because they were the people who came through and gave me something when I was starving. And then you try to sprinkle a few little scriptures in there, make that thing sound good, package that thing the right way, boom, and you got people converting. And that's the whole conversion process. You catch people in their traumas. Once you catch them in their traumas, once you meet a natural need or an emotional need, or whatever the case may be, and now people are willing to listen. And so people will go through this cycle 24 to 48 months. Some people go through it for a lifetime. They'll ask questions, but they dare not say anything, because if they say something, they're afraid of being shot down, somebody saying something, ostracizing them, kicking them out, all of that. So they just kind of go with the flow, although internally they might be feeling a particular way. Internally, they might know something is not right about this. Internally, they might say to themselves, this is not right. I can't do this. This is something wrong. But who do I talk to about this? And that's where a lot of people are. A lot of people I see going on these journeys traveling. A lot of people down in Honduras. They're down in Cartagena in Colombia. They're down in Salvador and Brazil. They're in different parts of Africa. They're throughout the world, going on their own spiritual journeys. People in Bali and people over here. They're over there. They're trying to figure out what's happening because they recognize, for many of them, a horrible mind game has been played on them, because they're going back and they're reading the different scriptures and they're saying this is not adding up. That you judge a tree by the fruit that it bears, and you see that the fruit is rotten. You see it, but they tell you, well, that's okay. It's no problem. All the fruit aren't rotten. Stop bashing. And it's like the people are saying, we're not bashing. Look, we just want the truth. Can you just give us just a little bit of dose of the truth, so that we don't feel like we're losing our minds because you're telling us one thing, but we see something completely different. You're telling me one thing, but the actions don't line up. The people are saying that they're prosperous, but they're still broke. The people are. Why is it there's so much? If the people are supposed to be so prosperous, why is there so much poverty? Where there's such extreme religions, where the religion is so strong that poverty is right there side by side. Now we can see that with our own eyes. But something internally tells us, nah, that's not what we see. Or, nah, you can't say anything about that. Nah, you don't question that. Maybe they're just making bad financial decisions, or maybe they're just that's just their lot in life, and that's what God wants for them. And so that's the way it is in the majority of the world. And there's only a handful of people, a handful of arrogant people who have all the wealth and finances, resources, and all these different things that's going on. I mean, so when people start asking these types of questions, it causes them to wonder what's going on. And I'm telling you, from having been on the inside of this stuff for as long as I was on the inside of it, I tell people to this day, if we, what is today? August 3rd, 2022. I would have to say, and it's not just today, but I would say over the past year or so, is the freest, if that's the word, or most free, whichever one. Y'all, all your grammar people, y'all know what y'all type it in there, what it is. It's the most free that I have been in my entire life, because I've not had something hovering over my head, or some institution hovering over my head, telling me how this is how you should live. This is what you should do. It's not bombarding my thoughts, and able to trust me and God. Okay, God, tell me you order my steps. And so when people begin to get that out of their way, it gives them a freedom. And so many people are afraid to live in that freedom. So many people are afraid to be able to say, okay, you know what, God gave me a brain too, so I can see and hear and read and think for myself. I don't need you to interpret everything for me. I don't need you to tell me everything for me. Because if that's the case, why did God give me a brain? Did He give me a brain to be a robot? Did He? What's going on here? Where does all of this come from? And so you're finding more and more people who are saying enough is enough. And I can tell you, I'll use some of the church terms so people understand, or religious terms. The most bondage I ever felt in my life was when I was heavily entrenched in religious systems. That was when I felt the most bondage, where I felt like I can't even. It's like a chain around it. It felt, if I'd never been a slave, but that's when I felt like a slave. So it's like it was always trying to. I referenced in a video I did with Leslie Jones, that's going to be coming out soon. Talked about how, like, the little pastor in D.C., he had a spell on the people to the point where they were afraid to go to the movie theater. And a lot of people did this to folks. They were sitting in the seat of the wicked or the scornful or whatever it is. Now, first of all, when that was supposedly written, there were no movie theaters. But somehow they made their interpretation that it was that. And that's what the people believed. And they said, well, I can't go to the movie theater because my pastor said I can't go to the movie theater and watch a movie. But he would sit at home and watch Westerns all the time. So I guess them shooting up on Gunsmoke was okay. Go kill Tonto or whatever. And that was fine. But if you sit in the movie theater in a seat, then somehow, and that's the type of thing, that's the type of stuff that so many people came up under, which trickled down from that Catholic influence of conversion, and in the Anglican influence of conversion, changing, how you're living is wrong, how we're living is right. We're holy, but they're killing everybody, they're stealing from everybody, they're banging everybody, they're doing everything they're telling everybody else not to do, but somehow they're holy. Somehow that's what they're doing and what they're preaching is the right thing. And so it'd be one thing if it were one or two people, but it was system wide. It's that system in the mindset, in the mentality that gets trickled down to people, and how this stuff begins to influence and affect people. And I can tell you that when, and again, I don't tell people what to do or what to follow or anything like that. I'm just kind of giving a perspective of what I've seen and how this stuff has affected people, and what it has done over the years. And so when, like, it's almost like now when you see people on that journey, especially like people who've been doing it for like 20 years, and or 30 or longer, and now they're to this point where they're realizing this stuff is not working, and they're like, well, what do I do? I'm just reminded of a couple of weeks ago. I was talking to a brother, and he. I don't want to give too many details. I was talking to a brother, and he, out of the blue, he came over to me and asked me a question, and it was talking about the whole system, and a lot of times for a lot of Black Americans will start to ask these questions, especially once they start getting around and getting in their 40s and their 50s and stuff, and they've done the system for a while and they start asking questions. And he came to me, he said, Jay, he said, I was a deacon in the church for either 12 or 17 years. I forget which years. He said, I was a deacon in the church all those years. And he said, man, he said, I got in there and I started seeing the real deal. And he said, I just couldn't do it. He said, I couldn't do it anymore. He said, the system is what's destroying the people. This is what came out of his mouth. So I'm sitting there watching. I'm like, okay. I'm listening. And then he said to me, he said, man, he said, I'm telling you the story. He said, but man, he said, I feel like I want to cry. He said, because I led people into that mess. And this is a strong, grown man. This is a grown man. And grown man, I think he might be in his 60s now. Strong, grown man. And he said, man, he kept talking. He said, man, I feel like I want to cry. He said, he said, I'm holding back tears right now. He said, I'm holding back tears. He said, because of what I was doing. He said, I didn't even realize he thought I was doing right. But in reality, I was a co-conspirator in the very things that I was saying that I was fighting against. And he said, but if I asked too many questions, then they wanted to shoot me down. Then not literally with guns, but try to shoot him down as far as his words and, or whatever, kick him out of positions and all these different things. So I I listened to him, and I told him I understood everything he was saying. I understood it. And I definitely could relate to a lot of what he was saying. And for him, he didn't have a lot of places where he could go and have that conversation because of just the way the system has entrenched itself and indoctrinated itself within people. And again, in my experience, and I'm just speaking from my experience, in 25 years, some of the absolute most wicked people that you will find will be in those types of settings, and some of the most loving people. Some of the most loving, caring, got your back, ride or die, love you, take care of your family. If you need, we'll take care of your children and won't mess with them. All of that you'll find in those same settings. So it just depends. It's typically the higher up you go on the food chain, if you will, that's when you start running into some of that high level crazy stuff where you're like, okay, Joker's get the fighting up in there, rumbling, because he's like, hey, hold on now, you ain't gonna punk me like that. You're not gonna do that to me. But I shared this whole thing about the Pope and the apology because this will get swept under the rug. It'll be that little news channel thing that'll happen, and then everybody will just kind of move on and go to mass next week and not even think about it and say, well, that was old news, and hopefully they can forgive. If you don't forgive, you're the one. It's like drinking poison waiting for someone else to die, and it's like this, that, and the other, and I hope that you can get over it, and you have a bitter root in your heart. And these are all the languages that they use after they done pimp slapped you, gang banged you, did all these different things, and now they tell you don't drink the poison because you drink the poison because you're gonna die, and all this other kind of stuff. And so instead of saying, hey, you know what, I can forgive you, but you still need to cut that check. You still need to go to jail. You still need to do this. You still need to do X, Y, Z. Because in your secular court system, the way that it works is that if I go and hit your car and cause damages, then either I need to pay for it or my insurance company needs to pay for it. You're not just going to let me walk away and say, oh, we forgive you, and you just destroyed the whole car and you do $100,000 worth of damages. Now, every now and then you run into a person who might, do that. But the typical person who's trying to survive from day to day, they're like, hey, let's exchange insurance information. Let's bring the police over so that I can go file a claim because there's been a damage that has happened against me. So let me file a claim. But somehow that whole thing goes out the window when it comes to certain situations. And so now the people are left hanging. Somebody has to pay for it. And so oftentimes it's the victims who are left having to pay for what the perpetrator of the crime or the offense or whatever has done. And so they're the ones who are repeatedly having to pay for it over and over and over and over, generation after generation after generation after generation. And so what that does is that, again, reinforces whatever it is that person or that institution was trying to do, and it leaves people in that particular space. And it's a very sad thing. For me, it's very sad because I see people who really believe that they are what's the word? They really believe that there's something that they're not, because they're following something that is false, meaning they're following something that has been manipulated and made up and twisted and been shifted, and it itself has backslidden, reworked itself, repackaged itself, turned itself around. And it has cast a spell. And if you want to talk about witchcraft, because a lot of people talk about witchcraft, if you want to talk about witchcraft, the very things that what the Catholic Church has done and still does even to this day could fall into the category of witchcraft. Some of the stuff that you see, some of these little bootleg preachers, I call them bootleg preachers, because all they do is hop on the system. Because, I mean, I tell people all the time, the easiest way to make money is to go just start a church. If you want to make quick money, go start a church. Just watch a few tapes, VHS tapes, right? Watch a few YouTube clips of how they do it, stand up on that stage, master that flow, know the cadence, know how that thing goes, blah, blah, blah. What's the particular trend that's happening right now in the different churches or whatever the religious institution is. Get up there, say what the people want to hear, do the song and dance, make the music sound good, put a couple good looking people up there on stage, make it, just package that thing real pretty, and the money gonna flow. The money will flow. You get the people coming. You got them good for go. When you first convert them, you convert them, and you get them for about 24 months because they're still on that high or whatever trauma they're going through. Make sure you have a bunch of programs that kind of speak to whatever they're dealing with, so that keeps them on the hook a little bit longer, and so they'll keep giving. So you get them 24 to 48 months. Once they get past 48 months, you really got them locked into the system, especially when they start converting and bringing other people, especially if the lady can get the man to come and get the husband or the boyfriend or whatever, and then he gets converted into it, he start giving his money, and you bring the children into it. You make sure you got a children's program that can indoctrinate the children, and you keep the children getting indoctrinated. You make sure the children cut their hair. Don't let their hair grow long, because Lord have mercy if they do that. Don't let the hair go natural. Lord have mercy, don't do that, because the hair grow natural. Now they're going to be like they're too African. You can't be too African. You got to be as European as possible without even realizing what's going on. You got to change your name. You got to make sure they have names like Jay. Got to have those type of European names. You can't have names like Kofi and Kwame and all of that. Now, of course, you can have that over in Africa, but you know what? What's interesting, even in Cote d'Ivoire, what they do is they ask you what your Christian name is. Well, what if you don't have no Christian name? But some places they were forcing them to take Christian names. So that's a form of indoctrination when you begin to change a person's identity. Why do they have to take a Christian name? What if they're not Christian? So this is on the little application when I go to Cote d'Ivoire. They ask you to fill the thing out. Say, what is your Christian name? And I'm looking and saying, well, can't tell you what I wanted to put down there. That probably wouldn't fall into the category. But this is how it works. It's a very simple process. You get the children. You get them in the little, you get them in the little children's programs, and you you do all of that, and they grow up in it, and you make sure you have your teenage program and your youth program, and you hover them, and then the deal is the best way to do it is to make sure you put people who are not equipped to handle what the generation is dealing with. So meaning you put some weak, spineless person in leadership, and that person doesn't want to deal with what the youth might be really dealing with and what the culture is dealing with, or either they are in the culture dealing with whatever the culture is dealing with. So basically you have no leadership, or you have leadership that is so overbearing that it runs the children away, or it intimidates the children to a point where the children conform behaviorally, but internally in their heart they really don't transform. So these are things, this is how you can do it. So you have a system going, and you keep this system going, and the people just keep funneling the money, and you just keep bringing more people in, because people have traumas, people are broken, people have answers, they don't know what to do. People follow things, that's good, hey, that's good, that's great, I need to do that. Or the culture says you better do this, and you don't question it. So that's what I see a lot of times when it comes to Africa. Different parts of Africa, same kind of thing though, where don't question what's going on. I just know I need to be in there, and I need to get my little pennies or whatever to make sure that this system keeps running. And if you learn how to master that the right way, you get a few billboards up there, put your little collar on. You probably really don't even know what the collar means, but put the little collar on, make yourself look spiritual, smile a little bit, make yourself look like you're preaching real hard. I'm preaching real hard. I'm preaching hard. You do that, and then the people will, they'll keep coming in. It doesn't take much to do it. I'm telling you, I tell you, it doesn't take much. And then same thing in America. All you have to do, the way the black church in America went, they got tired of the lack of just intelligent preaching. They got tired of that. They was just screaming and hollering and just shouting and yelling and just people just yelling, and that's it. Then they said, okay, we need to have somebody to come in and teach us something. So typically, if that's the case, when they wanted to have those that's when they start bringing the white people in. That's when the black churches start bringing the white people in, because then that's when the black folks will feel like, okay, all right, now we're getting to something, because it's not screaming and hollering and yelling and just whatever, just making people speaking in tongues, making up speaking in tongues. They're not even really speaking in tongues. They just making people feel as though, okay, this is a spiritual thing and this is the right thing. So they do that. They do the conferences. They do the revivals. They know at the beginning of the year they got to do the revival, because that's the point in time where the people, they're already excited about a new year. This is all part of the programming, y'all. The programming, they come in, let's do the revival, let's get it going, it gets the momentum going, and that keeps it going for the next year, because they have goals. They sit down in board meetings and they say, okay, how many people are we looking to convert this year? How much money do we want to raise this year? Last year's budget was $10 million, so we need to raise. All right, so it was $10 million during COVID. So now that we're dealing with COVID, let's see if we can get up to $15 million. How many giving units are us? Each family gives $80 per person, and this person does this, and this person does that. So we sit down and we figure out how to put all the programs together. We indoctrinate them, but we keep them busy, because we keep them busy throughout the course of the week. Well, some cultures and some of these religious institutions don't have that particular aggressive culture. Sometimes they say, we'll just keep you, come once to the meeting on the weekend, and then we'll do something online. We understand that you're busy lives and everything, so we want to recognize that. We want to be sensitive to it. So we'll put a podcast together. We'll put an app together. We'll do all these different ways that we can continue to indoctrinate you and really cause you to fall in love with the system. And once you are in it for so long, it's going to be hard for you to detach from it. It's going to be hard for you to question. It's going to be hard for you to even think about anything. You're just going to go with the flow. And so you have some places like that. You have some that are high touch points where people are needy, so they want to be in person. They want to see each other. And so it's like, look, we got this ministry for this. We got this. We got butt wiping ministry. We have a ministry for how to clean your earwax out. We got a ministry how to brush your teeth. We got a ministry on, because some people didn't know. Some people, parents didn't teach them how to do it. So it's, hey, we got all these different things. We're going to meet all these different needs. And so what ends up happening when all of these things are going on, people stop questioning. And so when they stop questioning, at that point, they say, okay, I'm here. But I'm telling you, I know what it's like to be stuck, I'm telling you, I did it for 6 years and got stuck. and it took everything in me to get out of it. And that was just 6 years. I haven't even told the story about the 17 years and that side of it. That's coming. I'm about to break that down. So, but not tonight. But it's like you stop and you say to yourself, where does this stuff come from? Where does it come from? And most people don't know. Most people can't tell you the origins of why they do what they do. And that's what I've seen across the world. So anyway, when I think about this whole Pope thing and all of that, just cut the check. When the Catholic Church starts cutting like $1 trillion check, now, all right, now I might go to mass. At that point, you cut $1 trillion check, I might, you ain't gonna catch me up in not now, no, nothing, no, ain't no way in the world. And I hope black folks will run up out of these Catholic institutions, and the Mormons ones as well, and shoot, not just some, a nice amount of these Anglican, Protestant ones that aren't doing anything. You know, I mean, if it's working and you're finding your life improving and all of that, then hey, but just analyze, ask questions. You know, what are the origins of this? Where did this come from? Why do we do this, and why do we, you know? And if it points back to European indoctrination, and you don't ask yourself that as a person who is a descendant of Africa, or even if you are even if you're one of them people who like, well, we not African and all that, and you into that, even ask that, even for that crowd, you know, start asking some difficult questions. And if the leaders can't answer these questions, if they don't know the answer to it, why are you following that? That's the question. Why are you following people who can't answer the difficult questions? And then you ask yourself, why is it that you're not willing to ask the difficult questions? Why aren't you willing to get down into the dirt, into the mud, and ask the questions that have come into your heart and into your mind? And oftentimes it really starts with the origins. And if you go back, and the origins started with, you know, some dude who wrote 3 books and said that he had a vision from God, and that was it. Well, shoot. Well, why can't you have a vision from God? I guess you can have one too, and just start up some old thing and just keep it moving, and people will follow. I will say that much. People will follow. So anyway, I say to the Catholic Church, cut the check and cut the BS. That's the bottom line, because all that is a BS. It's talk. Talk is cheap, and until we get to the point of stopping accepting talk only, and using our voices and leveraging our voices properly, then we'll continually be dealing with the same old nonsense. So anyway, y'all know what to do. Share this one. Subscribe, like, and share, because if we don't say it, and if we continue to do this just from, you know, trying to appease people and go through all of this stuff, then we're co-conspirators to the problem. One of the things about the maximum impact goal is to give people a safe space where they don't have to worry about being proselytized, harassed, and anybody can come, whatever it is that you, as long as you're not trying to harass anybody with it and force it on anybody, then hey, whatever it is you're doing, that's what you're doing, because everybody's at a different point of the journey. There have been points of the journey where I thought I knew everything and I thought I had it down pat, and then I learned something new. Then I saw something different, and I saw something. I saw it. No one told me. I saw it with my own eyes. And so that's, you know, so because like one person said how she came on a trip. She said, "Look, I'm agnostic. I'm not into any." I'm not into the religious stuff at all. She said, I just wanted to come and have a nice trip where I could be safe and not be harassed and have a good time. I said, you can come and have a good time with us. Nobody's going to bother you. I've had people come on and say, hey, look, I'm a Christian and I love the Lord and I'm having a great time and this is what I want to do. Hey, come on our trips. Nobody's going to bother you. Nobody's going to harass you and say anything about what you believe. So come on and have a good time on the trip. I've had people who different types of Islam. They've come on and, hey, come on and do your thing. Hey, you know what? As long as you're not bothering anybody, nobody bothering you. Hey, we're all going to have a good time. And that's the way that it is. That's what we're doing, because people just need to know that they can be someplace and not be harassed. And not be harassed. And not be harassed. So that's the deal. All right, everybody, look, you know what to do. Subscribe, like, share, and hopefully we get to see you on one of our amazing trips. You're going to be seeing more content about our trips. You're going to be seeing more heavy content like this, because I can't go. There are a lot of people who sell out because they just want your trip money. I've had people tell me, hey, I don't want to go on your trip because you know you're talking too strong. Okay, well, that's fine. I mean, hey, somebody else loved it, so hey, it is what it is. You know, I just want people to be able to enjoy themselves, see this beautiful continent. When we start doing domestic trips, see what's happening in America, and enjoy that. And everybody has a great time, and that's what I see. I see the blending of all of it, and that's how, for those who need to heal, that's how you begin to heal, when nobody's harassing you, and you can go through the process that you need to go through. All right, everybody, you know what to do. All right, subscribe, like, share, and be sure to pick up the Adventures of Darren and Destiny children's book series, where they take you all around the continent of Africa. And so we got the first 3 books out, number 4 on the way. Make sure you pick it up, DarrenandDestiny.com. Talk to you soon.
Open up your eyes and see all the fun